they want. But I think we can bring these parties together so that the community, the neighbors, are comfortable with the solution that becomes more business friendly. And in the long term, that's good for them because it makes for a better economy. And we can have something for the business people that's good for them and developers so they can come into this community. They can build more homes, they can build more businesses, and we can have something that becomes more attractive. That may involve annexations. I don't know. And those are things, quite frankly, that I as an individual can't even start thinking about until you've got the city staff behind you that can research these things and answer these questions and come up with solutions and material that we can take to the citizens and the business people. We have a lot of business people in this community who are not residents of Carbondale. But as business people in Carbondale, their interests are here. And we've got to get them engaged more in the community. Then we take a break, you talk.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm not quite sure where to start, but so let me start with the thing that you talked about with changes in zoning, changes in rules, changes in enforcement, and code interpretation. Give me some specifics. What kinds of zoning things hold Carbondale back compared to, say, Carterville? Why are they getting all the houses?
Well, first I think if you go back to look at the comprehensive plan that they developed for Carbondale, in that there's already, I think, a time frame established where the whole zoning issue for the community has to be re-examined. There was a lot of, I guess you could say, destruction almost. If you look back in this community, neighborhoods that were fine neighborhoods were just, the university was growing, and the university made a lot of mistakes. They said, oh, take your houses, we can't build dorms right now, turn your houses into these, apartments, we'll see how many kids we can pack into them. Decimated neighborhoods. And what you would like to see now is some of these neighborhoods reversed, so you can bring them back. There has to be a better definition of the single family and the apartments and where you bring these together. There's getting to be much more of a problem with Section 8 housing in this community, and there has to be a way that you can work with the governmental bodies that deal with Section 8 so that you can create a more balance in the community. There's definitely a place for Section 8 housing. There's poor people, they need help. But it shouldn't be such that it gets out of whack and you've got the number increasing so that it's disproportionate to the number in the community. And that's one of the problems we've got right now with the housing in this community. I've heard another one of the candidates say, the reason we don't have more students coming to SIU is there's not good housing for students. I look around this community, I have never seen so much new, nice housing for students since I lived in this community. When I came here as a hospital administrator, I had problems just finding an apartment for myself to live in. I was single at the time, and there wasn't much to choose from. Now there's this tremendous array out there, brand new, very nice student housing. The problem then is, in some cases you've got the older student apartments that are just deteriorating, and what's going to happen to them. That's where the Section 8 factor comes in. You've got some developers that come in that where they have those old apartments, they tear them down and replace them with new ones. Other cases, they just keep milking those and, quite frankly, destroying neighborhoods, and that's where the zoning and the enforcement has to come into play to try and prevent further deterioration in some of these neighborhoods and protecting our neighborhoods.
Talk a little bit about Section 8. I believe I have an understanding of what a Section 8 resident is, but what classes of people, what types of people fit into that category?
Well, they're poor people that need subsidization and housing. And I guess in the old days, you used to have a lot more public housing projects where
scattered sites.
Yeah, scattered sites. They'd have these public housing developments, and people go live there, and then there'd be the housing authority, and they would subsidize it. Well, now you can basically go, if you meet all the qualifications, and get a voucher from, I think it's the Jackson County Housing Authority. Some body, I don't quote, I just quote myself, but I'm not sure. They give you that voucher, and then you basically give that to the landlord who live there. These tend to be people without jobs. They're poor. There needs to be a place for them, but there needs to be a balance of how many you have in a community before you start basically deteriorating the fabric of the community.
You're concerned about the number in Carbondale?
I'm concerned about the number.
How would that be changed? How could
That's
that
what
be
I
done?
need to find out with city legal counsel once you get in, as far as what you can do to control those numbers. What are the formulas? Right now, it just seems like there's a bottomless pit as far as how much Section 8 is available. Might be worthwhile for you to look into that.
So let me ask you this.
After the election.
This kind of goes in a different direction. What do you think the core responsibilities of city government are? The critics of what's going on at City Hall, at any City Hall, can point to things that they think the city shouldn't be involved with. And I think that you caught some heat within the last couple of years for a stance you took on the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, my stance was on any organization similar to a Boys and Girls Club. These are wonderful social agencies. In some cases, they're maybe not social, they may be arts, things of that nature. I do not believe it is the city government's role as the collector of taxes to be a philanthropic organization. That's the role that you and I have in a community. It is our responsibilities, private foundations, it could be businesses, whatever. It's their role to support these types of charities. And a city government's role is to provide those basic services for a community. And it's the responsibility you're entrusted with. You collect taxes from the community, and then you go out, well, I'm going to be the real good guy now. I've got all this tax money, so I'm going to really feel good, and I'm going to support that charity.
You can buy yourself some votes that way. Is what it's done.
Well, I won't go into that, but yeah, you can lose some votes in my perspective if you say that too. But I just don't think that's the proper role. And would I say there's never an exception? Yeah, there may be some exception. I don't know what it is. But I think right now, with the financial crisis that this whole country is facing, as far as governments, I think governments have to take a whole new look at what their mission is. And there were those days when governments had lots of money. They were getting other governments' money. They were getting grants, and just kind of dole it out. And they never look down the road. They never look at what a nuclear reactor is going to do when it goes bad. They react when it goes bad. I find governments I like things to be proactive. In hospitals, you've got to be proactive. If you aren't, somebody gets really hurt. And governments react too much. Every time a bus hits something back in New York City, then now we're going to go out and check all the buses. Well, why weren't they checking the buses before the bus hit something? Now, it always irks me. There's always some senator who comes on the news, and now he's got to make a big statement. Well, what was he doing before? He wasn't making any statements before. He was not doing anything to ensure that if a government agency is responsible for monitoring something, they're doing their job. When it goes wrong, then they go and try and nail somebody. Be more proactive, look at those issues ahead of time. And that's why I think our government, the city government here, really needs to re-examine its mission and gets back to those basics. Because somehow, we may not be able to lower this whole tax mess we're in, but we've got to find a way to stabilize it, which includes the schools. You've got to find a way to stabilize it.
I think that's an interesting thing, and as mayor, you don't have any direct responsibility or authority over schools. And it looks to me like we've got too many school districts in the Carbondale community. What could you do to speed consolidation along from the office of the mayor?
Well, you can't do too much. The governor maybe can do something. When I first started into this whole process, as naive as I was and still am about the whole thing of campaigning, I remember sitting down with someone and saying, it makes no sense to have all these school districts. And he kind of agreed with me. Except he pointed something out to me. The way I think it's a combination of labor contracts and laws are put together, that if a school teacher makes so much money in this school district, and a teacher in this school district makes so much money more, and you bring them all together, everybody rises up to the top, which to me makes no sense at all, and basically makes it impossible in most circumstances to bring these school districts together, unless you are going to be able to say, well, we've got all this increased cost, but because we're going to be able to close 3 schools. Now, if the governor and the legislature can step in and say, okay, we can save all this money, and they can make their case, and our governor doesn't flip-flop on it again, as he tends to do, he can change some of those rules, and then I think you can have tremendous savings and a better educational opportunity for our children. Now, we've got, you've got the Carbondale School District, you got Unity Point, Giant City, Carbondale High School. You don't need all those with superintendents and their support staffs and everything. That's nonsense.
Why not just one?
I would be all in favor of that. As a mayor, you can't do a thing about it.
Yeah, you could use the bully pulpit. You could write letters. You could call the governor and say, "Don't stop on this." Would you do those things?
Oh, I feel very strongly, as I've stated earlier, because of our grade school system here.
400 students.
They're inadequate.
An administrator and a principal both, or superintendent. I mean,
we got multiple principals.
It's just crazy.
I want to see something done, and I would use any resource I had as a mayor to try and achieve that goal for the community and for our children.
I took a tour about 6 months ago through every neighborhood in Carbondale with a realtor who really knows his stuff. The one thing, well, I came away with several things, but one of the big things that I came away with is I don't think there's any place for the professional class in Carbondale other than a small enclave around Deer Lake, especially young professionals. I mean, what do you do to get that kind of person to live in here? Your best and brightest residents.
Well, it goes back to those 2 out of those 3 issues that I talked about, that I used to talk to young doctors about, and that is the educational system and the tax situation. If you can make progress in those 2 areas, people will live in this community. We wanted to live in this community. My wife's a physician. I was the administrator of the hospital. We had a child. We wanted to live in the community. We wanted our child to be exposed to a diverse cultural situation in the schools. My wife didn't want to be driving in from the country in the middle of the night when she was on call. There were a lot of factors, and we made a conscious decision to find something that was suitable for us in the community. There is still land in this community, and I think there is still the opportunity for annexation for this community, that you can bring in some of the surrounding areas. I've heard so many people complain, and I had an answer for their complaint. We do all our business in Carbondale. We have no say on who's going to be on city council or the mayor. And I said, well, that problem can be solved very easily. We can annex where you live.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to move because they like where they live. And they're living a mile, 2 miles outside, and there's a lot of opportunities. And in between that, there's a lot of opportunities for developers. If there, again, you can perhaps change the business climate and make it more inviting to develop some other communities. You don't have to have a golf course. You don't have to have Stone Creek and all this other stuff. You can have some beautiful areas developed right in this community, and this community can grow and make it much more attractive than it is right now.
George, I've got a question. You had a great time running the hospital, very stressful. You finally get a chance to relax a little bit. Why did you jump into the mayor's race?
Well, I don't relax very well.
I couldn't have guessed.
You couldn't have guessed either. The TV people used to hate it when I'd wear this because it was too busy for their camera, and I said, well, it kind of fits my personality. I just felt restless. I could do something else. I wanted to do something else, and there were other options out there. I didn't want to go back into business. People said I should be a consultant. I didn't even like consultants. I didn't like them when they came to work for me, very rarely anyhow. And then this opportunity came along, and Mr. Cole decided he wasn't going to run. Some other people approached me, and we started talking, and I kind of talked myself into it after a while.
And as a follow-up, how do you see your role as mayor working with the city council? Because you can want one direction, but if the city council wants to go another direction, You know, how do you see your role in these things about, you know, you're talking about